Welcome to NTD News. I'm Kevin Hogan. Here are today's top stories. The late Capitol Police officer Brian Sicknick lies in honor in the Capitol Rotunda. President Biden, lawmakers, and the Capitol Police Force pay their respects. House Republicans want to delay confirmation of President Biden's pick for Commerce Secretary. They're concerned she'll take Huawei off the trade blacklist. Florida is trying to stop big tech from taking sides during an election. Tech giants would face penalties and could face legal action under a new bill. Some Congress members may soon be facing fines. The chamber voted to approve a new rule to levy penalties on lawmakers who refuse certain security measures. And Georgia lawmakers introduced legislation aimed at restoring confidence in elections. One lawmaker says if the public can't trust the election system, they will lose confidence in the government. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer says he and Minority Leader Mitch McConnell have finally reached a power-sharing agreement, explaining the resolution would be passed through the Senate today. The move allows Democrats to take control of committees, which they would have been locked out of without a deal. The two Senate leaders have come to an agreement on how power is divided. That's because of the 50-50 split between Democrats and Republicans in the upper chamber. But Vice President Kamala Harris is able to break ties as president of the Senate. It's unclear how soon any agreement could be passed, as all 100 senators would have to agree on how to speed up a vote on the measure. And a final tribute to the Capitol Police officer who died last month following the riot on January 6th. Officer Brian Sicknick laid in honor at the Capitol's Rotunda. The Capitol Police officer who died after sustaining injuries during the breach of the U.S. Capitol laid in honor in the building's rotunda. His cremated remains were brought in Tuesday evening while his former colleagues from the Capitol Police Force lined the East Front steps. The silent ceremony is a rare honor. He's only the fifth private citizen to get it. The final tribute is more frequently used for government or military officials. Congressional leaders from both parties and dozens of officers came to pay their respects. The 42-year-old officer was injured on January 6th. A Capitol Police statement last month said he'd been physically engaging with protesters and later collapsed at the division office. He died from his injuries the following day. Officer Sicknick will be buried in Arlington National Cemetery on Wednesday. Earlier on Tuesday, the Senate Judiciary Committee questioned how the January 6th incident got so out of hand. The committee's incoming chairman, Senator Dick Durbin, and ranking member, Senator Chuck Grassley, sent a letter to the Justice Department and the FBI demanding answers. The U.S. House approves a new rule to punish lawmakers who bypass metal detectors. It passed Tuesday night. First-time offenders will be fined $5,000. Violations after that will cost $10,000. The metal detector checkpoints were set up outside some House chamber doors after the U.S. Capitol breach. Pushback soon followed. Several House members are simply walking around the machines. Others refused to hand over their bags after setting off the machines. Some also argued with Capitol Police trying to enforce the measures. House Republicans want to delay confirmation of President Biden's commerce pick until she commits to keeping Huawei on the trade blacklist. Here are the details.
Nearly 24 House Republicans say Huawei poses a national security threat, and they're concerned that President Biden's commerce pick, Gina Raimondo, will take Huawei off the trade blacklist. Although Raimondo vowed to protect U.S. telecom networks last week during her confirmation hearing, she wouldn't commit to keeping Huawei on the blacklist. Now the House Republicans want the Senate to halt her confirmation. Republican Steve Womack tweeted, "Huawei is inextricably tied to the CCP and poses a national security threat. It's beyond concerning that Governor Raimondo and the administration have failed to commit to keeping the company on the Commerce's entity list. Her confirmation should be halted until we have a concrete stance." Republican John Joyce writes, "The Senate should hold on Governor Raimondo's confirmation until the Biden administration clarifies its intentions for Huawei and the Chinese Communist Party. They say the Department of Commerce has authority over export controls, and leaders there need to understand the CCP and how it uses technology for surveillance. By law, Chinese companies have to cooperate with Chinese intelligence agencies if asked. Huawei denies the allegations. Former President Trump put Huawei on a trade blacklist in 2019, and he tried to convince U.S. allies to exclude it from their 5G networks. The Republicans say this is a bipartisan issue, and they're calling on members on both sides of the aisle to support their effort.
President Biden has signed more executive orders on immigration. They mainly target undoing efforts made through former President Trump's immigration policies. NTD's Melina Weisskopf reports.
Now, there's a lot to unpack here, so we'll start at the top. One of Biden's executive orders will, quote, revoke the Trump administration's order that sought to justify separating children from their parents. The wording here suggests that Trump's policy is what's responsible for family separation. But there's more context to consider. Before Trump took office, a judge ruled that children could not be held in detention centers. This led to an influx of migrants under the impression that if they came to the U.S. as a whole family, they would be let in.
I find this task force to really just kind of be kind of fluff that is just maybe put out there as a feel good about how compassionate the Biden administration is on the immigration issue, as opposed to addressing deep rooted problems. You have aliens primarily from Central America who are either bringing their own children or are renting children and treating them as if they are a human shield to prevent any form of immigration enforcement.
Then when Trump got into office, he basically had two choices: either let whole families into the U.S. or detain only the parents and let the children go. Trump chose the latter, which caused backlash from critics. But consider what's happened when some families are offered a reunion.
And what's not been reported over the last couple of years, and I think the Biden administration will soon learn, is that in some instances, the sponsor or the parent has actually been identified by the government, and the parent or sponsor didn't want the kid back.
What's more is the Biden administration is lifting President Trump's requirement that family sponsors repay the government if immigrants receive public benefits. Basically, if an immigrant needs financial support, a sponsor has to sign a contract with the U.S. to say they will support the immigrant until the immigrant can take care of him or herself. If the immigrant receives welfare instead, the sponsor must pay the U.S. back.
That's not a President Trump policy. That is literally the law. Really common sense. This is the underlying principle of our lawful immigration system, which is that the immigrant should be self-sustaining.
And another policy the Biden administration is doing in these executive orders is reviewing the Migrant Protection Protocols Program, or Remain in Mexico policy. This is a program that essentially makes asylum seekers wait in their home countries until their asylum cases are taken up. Now, the Biden administration has already suspended people from enrolling in this program, but he hasn't completely gotten rid of it. Some have warned that there could be another crisis at the border if he does suspend it. But for now, we'll have to see if he continues this program or gets rid of it. Melina Weisskopf, NTD News.
A group of Republican state senators introduces a series of bills that would amend the Peach State's election laws to end statewide vote by mail, the use of ballot drop boxes, and automatic voter registration. The package of 8 bills also includes a measure that would require voters to provide a copy of their identification or driver's license when applying for an absentee ballot. The bills represent a major overhaul of the way Georgia runs its elections. Republicans lost the presidential election and 2 special elections for the U.S. Senate. Then President Trump had challenged the validity of the outcome of the presidential election in the state. He also expressed doubts about the state's Senate runoff results. The Atlanta Journal-Constitution reports that Georgia State Senator Butch Miller says the bills are about restoring confidence so that voters don't lose trust in the government. Florida is tackling big tech companies like Facebook, Twitter, and Google. The state's governor says he won't put up with any interference with elections.
Over the years, however, these platforms have changed from neutral platforms that provided Americans with the freedom to speak to enforcers of preferred narratives.
Governor Ron DeSantis is demanding change from big tech.
Floridians should have the privacy of their data and personal information protected, their ability to access and participate in online platforms protected, and their ability to participate in elections free from interference from big tech protected.
The Republican governor laid out harsh penalties that big tech could face under a new bill. For example, if a technology company deplatforms a candidate during an election, it will face a daily fine of $100,000 until the candidate's access to the platform is restored. Or if a tech company manipulates a user's access to political content or candidates using algorithms, it would also face daily fines. And there are other measures, too. If one election candidate is promoted above another one in an unequal manner, the value of the free promotion would be recorded as a political campaign contribution. and this would be enforced by the Florida Elections Commission. The move follows reports of tech giants suppressing news that was unfavorable to then-candidate Joe Biden while banning sitting President Trump from their platforms. Florida's House Speaker Chris Sprouse commented on the new bill, saying the 5 families of darkness, Facebook, Twitter, Google, Amazon, and Apple, won't go unchecked here in Florida anymore.
Multiple sources are accusing the Biden administration's White House press secretary of screening reporter questions before press briefings. We look at that and 2 other controversies.
A number of White House reporters are claiming the White House communications team is asking them to submit questions in advance. According to a report by the Daily Beast, some reporters flagged the issue to the White House Correspondents Association last week. Association leaders apparently told reporters to push back against these requests. One White House correspondent says, quote, "The press can't really do its job in the briefing room if the White House is picking and choosing the questions they want." A deputy White House press secretary under Obama, on the other hand, believes this is standard practice. He says, quote, "This is textbook communication work. The briefing becomes meaningless if the press secretary has to repeatedly punt questions, instead of coming equipped to discuss what journalists are reporting on."
Thanks for your patience. Lots to say about COVID, no doubt about it. Let's see. Let me talk to our team about it.
The press secretary is also under scrutiny for saying she sometimes treats reporters as if she's working in an insane asylum. The following is an interview with NPR.
I have a little secret thing I do, maybe not secret because I'm telling all of you, but when reporters are getting really loud or they're starting to ask crazy questions, I just slow down my pace and I talk very quietly and I treat them like I'm an orderly sometimes in an insane asylum.
And another controversy, YouTube is apparently deleting dislikes from White House videos since President Biden settled in. Many netizens have been noticing that thousands of dislikes were removed from the White House channel. A netizen that tracked White House YouTube videos for 24 hours showed her findings. For most videos, the number of dislikes dropped sharply after the first 4 hours, even though the number of views and likes rose steadily. YouTube says this is part of its regular efforts to remove what it calls inauthentic engagement. Colin Fredrickson, NTD News.
White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki says the White House will continue the work of the U.S. Space Force. That's after making comments some considered demeaning. She changed her approach toward the newest military branch via a Twitter post. She said she looked forward to continuing the work of the Space Force and that team members can share updates in the briefing room at any time. It comes after an earlier press conference that brought criticism from Republican lawmakers. Psaki was asked about President Biden's plans for the Space Force. Psaki's response seemed to take the military branch as a joke, adding she wasn't aware of who to contact regarding updates on it. Politico reported that a statement from the House Armed Services Committee's top Republican demanded an apology. Twitter has shut down another account. This time, it's the official account for pillow and bedding company MyPillow. NTD's Christina Kim tells us why this happened.
Twitter says it permanently suspended the official account for MyPillow because it violated policy against ban evasion. The company's CEO Mike Lindell used the MyPillow account to circumvent his own ban from Twitter. Lindell is a friend and outspoken supporter of former President Trump. He was banned from Twitter a week ago over his repeated claims that the presidential election was rigged. The Minnesota businessman posted on the company Twitter account, "Thank you to everyone who has supported MyPillow during this time. Jack Dorsey is trying to cancel me out." Another post on the account accuses Twitter CEO Jack Dorsey of being tied to election fraud. Following Lindell's personal Twitter ban, companies including Bed Bath & Beyond and Kohl's stopped selling MyPillow products. The retailers claim it was a performance-driven decision, but Lindell maintains that they were pressured into dropping him because he spoke out against alleged election fraud. But some companies like Costco say they will continue to carry MyPillow products. Lindell told USA Today that he can't believe they're doing this to MyPillow and said, quote, "They're out to destroy me." Christina Kim, NTD News.
It seems an era of record-breaking ratings for legacy media outlets is over. CNN viewership took an over 40% plunge in the first week since Biden moved into the White House. The slump comes after highs during election coverage from weeks prior. Other outlets like MSNBC and Fox News also saw declines, though not as much as CNN. Some industry observers have suggested that after years of railing against then-President Trump, some broadcasters lost the content that excited their audiences. Back in 2018, Trump even hinted this could happen, writing on Twitter that when he's no longer in office, quote, their ratings will dry up and they will be gone. That's as other up-and-coming outlets gain ground. The drop may not last for long, though. Trump's impeachment trial begins next week. Still to come, essential farm workers in California struggle to access the CCP virus vaccine. Now public health officials are delivering their shots in the fields. And former UFC champion Tito Ortiz has been elected mayor pro tem in his hometown of Huntington Beach, but his fellow council members are trying to remove him. Find out more after this short break.
마루 유치원 폐쇄 명령서입니다.
전 폐쇄 명령 받아들일 수 없습니다.
유치원 폐쇄 명령이라.
좀 들어간 건 어떻게 됐어? 도저히 방법이 없대?
정일도 사장님을 대신해서 제가 대신 말씀드리면 안 되겠습니까?
A new study shows that 2 shots of the virus vaccine may elicit bigger side effects for people who've already been infected by the virus. NTD's Miguel Moreno has the details on why 1 may be enough and updates on the pandemic.
As you know, all available COVID vaccines in the U.S. require 2 doses, but is 1 enough? A new study says yes, for some. These researchers say people who were once infected with the CCP virus suffered more side effects than never infected participants. They say this is because the infected already have antibodies, which help the vaccine do its job more effectively. The paper hasn't been peer-reviewed yet, but researchers say their findings could change the number of shots people get in the future. But even getting the vaccine hasn't been easy this week in the Northeast. Some states were battered by a nor'easter so much that officials put their vaccination sites on hold in states like New Jersey and New York. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo suspended sites and appointments across the state Monday and Tuesday.
Frankly, we didn't want a lot of people on the roads this morning. We were still clearing roads this morning. And the appointments will be honored. That will be done. Don't worry about losing your appointment.
New York is expected to get its hands on more vaccines. That's because President Biden has increased the number of vaccines he'll send states across the country. The amount of doses being sent to different states will go up by 5% for a total of 10.5 million doses per week. That's a lot of vaccine. Biden's team also says they'll send vaccines to about 6,500 pharmacies nationwide on the 11th of this month to start. Now, as you can imagine, someone must be making money from this. At least one of those 2 vaccine makers is projecting it will make roughly $15 billion in revenue in 2021. This is Pfizer, one of the world's largest pharmaceutical companies, and they're a global supplier. So let's take a step away from the pharmaceutical measures. We went over double masking last week and how it wasn't recommended by the CDC, even though Dr. Anthony Fauci said it's likely to be more effective than just wearing 1 mask. Disease expert Dr. Anthony Fauci tells the Washington Post that the CDC may recommend double masking.
That's possible, David. In fact, just discussions with my CDC colleagues yesterday, we were talking about the CDC is looking at doing a study of seeing whether or not 2 masks might be better than 1. It makes common sense that you would think.
Fauci says the CDC only makes science-based recommendations, which is why they haven't recommended double masking. But some media have been critical of him. Some people appear to have lost confidence in the doctor because he's flip-flopped on some issues, masks being one of them. But he's defended himself, saying the discussion around the virus is changing with new developments, but not the goalpost. Miguel Moreno, NTD News.
Former UFC champion Tito Ortiz was elected last November as the mayor pro tem of Huntington Beach, California. But now his city council colleagues are trying to remove him from the post over not wearing a mask. NTD's Jack Bradley has more.
Huntington Beach Mayor Pro Tem Tito Ortiz, who is a former UFC fighting world champion and a Hall of Famer, is being stripped of his title by city council members.
People that voted for Tito, they're saying that your vote doesn't matter, and we are going to micromanage who we want to represent you.
Residents and supporters of Tito Ortiz from Huntington Beach gathered outside of City Hall on February 1st to oppose the City Council's motion, which is to remove Tito's Mayor Pro Tem title for not wearing a mask in public and missing one City Council meeting.
If wearing a mask makes somebody more comfortable, then put it on. I don't want to wear one either. I hate it, but I have to wear one at work.
And it is a ceremonial job, but you're not there to perform the ceremonial duties.
The former UFC champion started his campaign for the city council last year and eventually got over 42,000 votes, the highest number in the city's history. After being elected as mayor pro tem, Tito said he has been unfairly targeted by some fellow councilors, particularly for his anti-mask stance.
I've been combative my whole life. I've been fighting to survive my whole life. I thought of stepping here on city council, I could come and help and be a team leader. But it's been nonstop attack after attack because I don't wear a mask. It shouldn't be about the mask.
Supporters of Tito said the move is partisan because if Tito were to be stripped of the title, his position would be replaced by a Democratic council member.
And it will make us much more diligent in our efforts to get more Republicans on the city council and more people with our views and our policies.
The city council meeting ended without proceeding to a vote, and Tito finally kept his mayor pro tem title. But the supporters outside of the Civic Center believe that this could be a wake-up call for residents who are not paying attention to local politics. Reporting by Jack Bradley and Zach Lee, NTD News, Los Angeles.
California's mostly Latino farm workers have been deemed an essential workforce. But health officials and activists say they're also underrepresented in the state's vaccination program. Now some are getting their shots delivered in the field.
California public health officials vaccinated about 250 farm workers on Monday, including about 150 from Hadley's Date Gardens. It's the first of what they hope will be a weekly visit to agricultural lands.
I was so ecstatic and just grateful that we were in the queue. But I couldn't believe, it was kind of like, I have to pitch myself if this is really happening because we've been waiting a long time. And I know a lot of people are. I know it's tough to get in. And so that's, we're just very grateful.
Farm workers are critical to California's agricultural industry, which accounts for a large chunk of the country's food supply. Many lack the internet access and transportation most Americans take for granted and use to get their shots.
We have a digital divide in our community. A lot of our community members don't have access to email or internet. That's why we have been on the ground helping them register, getting through the systems, but it's a lot of, we're talking about the most vulnerable workers.
The data also shows that California has lagged behind most other states in vaccinations administered per capita.
In California, 2 San Jose pastors gave closing remarks for their case versus the county. Local officials levied huge fines on them for reopening their church last year, but the judge ruled that they were in contempt of court. NTD's David Lamb brings us more from Calvary Chapel.
There was a lot of supporters for Pastor Mike McClure and Carson Atherley today. It's raining, but tents were set up.
California is the only state across the country that prohibits indoor worship. Why? Are we behind the Berlin Wall? Why is that?
Pastor Mike McClure and Carson Atherley, the defendants, gave their closing remarks at the San Jose courthouse last week.
My hope and desire is to honor our government, our officials. Honestly, in all that they do, I'm so thankful for. The church is the only place you're going to find life because it's not found in me. I'm no savior. The judge said I was a savior, and I said, no, Your Honor, I am not a savior. Jesus Christ is the savior.
The lawyer referenced the statue of President William McKinley.
right across the street, in May of 1901, President McKinley stood. He spoke the following words just outside this courthouse. Quote, "The Constitution is a sacred instrument, and a sacred trust is given to us to see to it that its preservation in all its virtue and its vigor is passed on to the generations yet to come."
I've been coming to church for the last 5 weeks. And again, it's a really good blessing to actually come to a church that's open, and much more than that.
We were told that the church cannot meet inside or sing, and that the county sent a letter saying they may take over the property by turning the fines into taxes. The fines are being held until February 19th. Tyler said churches are waiting on the Harvest Rock Church case, hoping the Supreme Court would rule in favor of churches. David Lamb, NTD News, California.
Up next, we look into inhumane treatments behind China's lockdown measures. And China's top diplomat tells the White House not to cross red lines on certain issues. That and more after the break.
Someone has to find the way to build the Great Dome. Completely new, completely original.
90% of news outlets in the United States are controlled by 6 corporations. They're not out to tell you the truth of what's happening. They're out to tell you the picture of the world that they represent. The mission of the Epoch Times is to chase the truth, to ground all statements in facts, and prevent people from being misled. This is a battle between truth and deceit. Subscribe today and join the Americans who are seeking truth and tradition. We'd love to have you on board.
In a speech, China's top diplomat tells the new administration how to behave when it comes to China issues. And new reports emerge about inhumane treatment amid China's lockdown measures. NTD's Tiffany Meyer has more.
In some districts in Shijiazhuang City, all households have their doors sealed up. This is because these districts are considered high-risk areas. Some of the doors are even welded. If residents open the door from the inside and damage the seal, it will be considered obstruction of pandemic prevention efforts, and they will be detained for 2 weeks. In the case of an emergency, such as acute illness, residents have to apply with authorities for a permit to go to the hospital. In rural areas, houses are sometimes not built with bathrooms inside, and residents have to find other ways to use the bathroom if their doors are sealed up. Farmers will lose their livestock because nobody feeds them. A video appears to show a 70-year-old man going outside and buying some cigarettes. He was caught by police officers. In the video, a patrolman says you should stay at home even if you have to smoke leaves. Another video appears to show a young man going back to his hometown on foot. All the villages on the way are under lockdown, and he cannot find a place to stay at night. The video shows him getting rejected at the entrance of a village and then going away. New comments from China's top diplomat encouraged the White House to play by Beijing's rules. In the half-hour speech, diplomat Yang Jiechi laid out what he called a red line that the U.S. shouldn't cross, namely to stop interfering in what China considers its internal affairs, including issues surrounding Taiwan, Hong Kong, Tibet, and the Xinjiang region. He warned that trespassing across this line would harm U.S. interests. Before Biden took office, former U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo designated Beijing's persecution of the Uyghur minority group in Xinjiang as genocide. The U.S. also imposed sanctions against Communist Party officials responsible for human rights violations in Hong Kong and Tibet. In his speech, Yang told the Biden administration to follow the One China policy with regards to Taiwan. During Trump's administration, top officials repeatedly differentiated between Taiwan and mainland China. In one interview, Pompeo said, quote, Taiwan has not been a part of China. Yang also said the U.S. should cooperate with China on drug control. According to a 2018 report by the U.S.-China Economic and Security Review Commission, China is the largest source of illicit fentanyl and fentanyl-like substances in the United States. In 2020, the U.S. sanctioned several Chinese nationals and a company for fentanyl trafficking. Yang's speech was part of a virtual event. It was hosted by the National Committee on U.S.-China Relations, a New York-based nonprofit.
A fertility smartphone app has come under scrutiny. It's been accused of sharing data with Chinese firms. NTD's Juliet Song has more details.
A Virginia resident is suing a popular fertility app for allegedly sharing her data with Chinese firms. In the complaint, she claims the app shared the data without her permission, and she's concerned the Chinese regime could have access to it.
When you're sharing them with a company that's located in China, and when the data that's being taken from consumers here in the United States is then being stored on servers in China, which we believe is the case here, we just know that the Chinese government has the ability to access any of that data.
Under Chinese law, companies have to hand over user data if regime officials ask for it. The app that's sparking controversy is called Pre-Mom. It helps women who want to conceive by tracking their ovulation. The app ranks in the top search results in both Apple and Android app stores. By 2019, it has scored 500,000 downloads. A growing number of women in the U.S. are turning to similar apps to help with baby planning. Last year, a privacy watchdog group found the Pre-Mom app was sharing user data with 3 Chinese advertising firms.
The type of information that was shared with these companies really allows them to pretty much, in essence, track your daily movements. They take off GPS location data. They can record each and every time that your particular phone uses any particular router.
Donovan says the Chinese companies can learn a lot about users through their data.
Who is this person? What are their habits? What do they like? What do they not like? They're able to get a phone number eventually with this data by doing ID bridging. Finally, they're also able to find out what other apps the person has on their device.
One of the 3 Chinese firms is owned by e-commerce giant Alibaba. Reports say the company helped the Chinese regime build a vast surveillance system to track its own citizens. Donovan does add that no evidence suggests any of the personal health data has been shared. He just filed the lawsuit and is expecting the defendant to respond in March. Pre-Mom said last year that it stopped sharing data with one of the Chinese firms and wasn't using the other 2 at the time. NTD reached out for comment but didn't get a response before airtime. Juliet Song, NTD News.
Some are voicing concerns that Burma, or Myanmar, could grow closer to the Chinese regime. The comments follow the country's recent military takeover.
The U.S. has declared the military takeover in Burma as a coup. The label triggered restrictions on U.S. aid that can be sent to the country. Burma's de facto leader Aung San Suu Kyi is under house arrest. Now all eyes are on the response from the Chinese regime, which has given no meaningful comments so far.
We have noticed what happened in Myanmar, and we are learning more about the situation.
Some worry the military takeover may increase China's influence in the region.
Myanmar could grow further from politically free democratic nations and join the League of China, which is under Communist Party dictatorship.
The Southeast Asian country was under socialist rule for decades until 2011, imposed by a military-run government. But even after civilian government took over, the military remained powerful in domestic affairs. The conflict between the military and Suu Kyi may have put China in an awkward position. A Chinese military source told the South China Morning Post that's because both have a cordial relationship with China. A reporter from the Myanmar Times said the coup may not necessarily please Beijing. He told Taiwan's Central News Agency that Beijing has been supplying weapons to anti-government armed forces in Burma, and that Burma's military sees the Chinese regime as disrupting peace in the country. Back in 2011, Burma's military-backed government also suspended construction on a dam China had promised to invest in. The move angered Beijing. That's because the dam would give China control over water flow of Burma's main river. It prompted national security concerns among Burma's leaders. But at the same time, since taking power, the country's democratically elected leader Suu Kyi has dropped her critical tone towards China. She has long promoted Beijing's Belt and Road Initiative, a program where China lends money to developing countries to build infrastructure while increasing its political sway. She also praised Beijing early last year for defending justice and fairness, adding that the two countries should jointly build the Burma-China common destiny. Penny Zhou, NTD News.
Thousands of Hongkongers are voting with their feet, leaving their homeland and moving to Britain since Beijing imposed a strict national security law on the Chinese territory last summer. And the UK expects hundreds of thousands more since its new visa came into effect over the weekend.
Mike, a photojournalist, says he plans to apply for the new visa and move to Leeds with his wife and young daughter.
It's because of the 2019 anti-extradition law situation, the political environment, the children's education. Those are the biggest factors.
Mike only gave his first name out of fear of retaliation.
For the political situation, I knew from a long time ago it would gradually become worse and worse.
Some Hongkongers are leaving because they fear punishment for supporting the pro-democracy protests that swept the former British colony in 2019. Others say China's encroachment on their way of life has become unbearable, and they want a better future for their children. The British government estimates that over 300,000 people will take up the offer of extended residency rights in the next 5 years. 5 million Hongkongers are eligible to apply for the 5-year visas. Eventually, they can apply to become British citizens.
Instead of just coming to you looking to apply schools to the UK, it's more now a more one-stop shop per se. They need help with properties, for example. They need help with visas, with a mortgage, with taxation advices.
Beijing criticized Britain's citizenship offer, saying it seriously infringed on China's sovereignty.
And just ahead, Jeff Bezos steps down as CEO of Amazon. He says it's to focus on his other ventures like the Washington Post and space travel company Blue Origin. And a cheesemaker in England says he's so vexed with Brexit's trade hurdles that he's threatening to move some operations to France. Find out more when we return.
When you look at TV networks in America, a soundbite and fight-it-out culture prevails on news and commentary programs. As a Canadian, I'm fascinated with America, and I wanted to offer American thought leaders an opportunity to share their thoughts in a deep dive format, where we can explore their ideas together. And so American Thought Leaders was born. The world's most brilliant thinkers believed that open discourse was the key to greatness. However, all around the world, we see that discourse is being stifled, and political agendas have subverted media. The Epoch Times launched its Global Thought Leaders program to bring back this great tradition of free thought. As the host of American Thought Leaders, every week I interview some of the most intriguing minds on the most pressing issues of our time. Be sure to check out our new episodes every week.
Amazon founder Jeff Bezos announced he will step down as company CEO. It's to focus on his other businesses, including the Washington Post and space travel company Blue Origin. Here's our latest financial and business news on jobs and the economy.
We're going to be very grateful to them.
Jeff Bezos, the billionaire founder of Amazon.com, who turned it from a simple online bookseller into one of the biggest technology companies in the world, is stepping down from the CEO role. Bezos, who will stay on as executive chairman of the board, made the announcement Tuesday in a letter to employees posted on the company's website. He told his workers, quote, "Being the CEO of Amazon is a deep responsibility and it's consuming. When you have a responsibility like that, it's hard to put attention on anything else." Taking over the CEO role will be Andy Jassy, the head of the company's lucrative cloud computing unit, Amazon Web Services, who will assume the top spot in the third quarter. Jassy's unit saw a roughly 30% surge in fourth quarter sales, according to results posted Tuesday. As a whole, company sales and profits easily topped forecasts as Amazon joins the rare club of companies topping $100 billion in quarterly revenues. It continues to benefit from a surge in online shopping during the global health crisis, and consumers flocked to its site to do their holiday shopping. Bezos, among the richest men in the world, said he will now have more time for his other endeavors, including his ambitions in space and his ownership of the Washington Post. Shares of Amazon have soared 18,000%, not accounting for stock splits, since Bezos took the company public nearly 24 years ago.
If you're collecting gold and silver coins this year, then you can expect a wait. The U.S. Mint says delays are partly due to pandemic-driven demand, as well as plant capacity issues. The U.S. Mint says sales of gold bullion coins rose over 250% in 2020, and silver coin demand was up 28%. The Mint says the heavy buying continues. Materials were already low after the CCP virus affected production. Then a social media-driven buying spree lifted silver futures to an 8-year high on Monday amidst the shortage. The Mint also limited distribution to suppliers in order to change the designs for its American Eagle bullion coins. The redesigned coins are expected to arrive by summer. The Democrats are reintroducing a bill to raise the minimum wage to $15 per hour by 2025. And U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen recently said the impact on making the change would be very minimal. NTD's Patrick Hayden spoke to an economic scholar who says there will be an impact on business costs.
Economic scholar Paul Kupiak says raising the national minimum wage to $15 will have an impact on business costs and employment, at least in some parts of the country. He pulled together state data on wages to find out how the increase could affect each state. States with a score higher than 1 would be most affected.
Janet Yellen was speaking with her. She took off her economist hat and she put on her politician hat when she said minimum wages wouldn't have any impact. And that struck me as I wanted to say, well, they're going to have an impact somewhere.
Kupiak says one impact of raising the federal minimum wage could be that businesses look to other countries for cheaper labor.
So businesses will substitute when prices go up. They try to substitute out of the more expensive input and somehow make it still work so they don't have to raise their prices. I mean, the biggest example of this is if you raise the domestic cost of labor, businesses often go abroad and hire cheap labor abroad.
He says Republican states are going to be more affected than Democrat states, and that introducing a $15 federal minimum wage exports the cost of labor from blue states to red states.
Places like New York or California, pay scales are higher than they are in Arkansas or Mississippi. So if you impose New York labor costs on Arkansas, it's not going to be a big plus for businesses in Arkansas.
He also explained the data does not include agricultural labor, and in many cases a state's minimum wage may be different for this sector than other types of jobs, being at a lower rate. Patrick Hayden, NTD News.
Airstream is updating one of its popular travel trailers to accommodate those working from home. The trailer maker has added office space to its Airstream Flying Cloud 30FB. The aluminum camper is a 30-foot-long trailer with a corner office. Its workspace comes with a desk and chair, along with hookups for internet connections. The area is even equipped with a fold-out bed. The travel trailer costs more than $107,000. Airstream says it plans to add office space to other models in the future. A traditional British cheesemaker is furious. It's even considering moving its operations to a cheese rival across the English Channel, France.
This is the Cheshire Cheese Company in rural northern England. It used to sell its traditional wax-coated cheeses directly to European customers. But costly red tape since Brexit has closed down that trade completely, the company says, pushing it to consider investing in a new hub in France. London and Brussels agreed a last-minute trade deal last December, which averted border tariffs. But many companies, particularly smaller ones, have warned that the deal has thrown up new obstacles to trade that are killing business. Managing Director Simon Spurrell.
We have no access any longer to the 446 million consumer market in the EU. However, there is no reciprocal arrangement in place at the moment, so the whole of the EU is free to ship into the UK with their cheese products, meat products, etc., and animal produce, whilst we can't.
Last year, the firm sold £180,000, or nearly $250,000, worth of truckles to EU buyers. That's the name for a type of cheese shaped like a barrel. And Sporrell used to sell gift boxes worth £25 to EU customers through his online shop. But now every export needs a health certificate signed off by a vet, regardless of its size, at £180 a pop. The company, which had predicted a 40% rise in sales this year, has now halted plans for a new distribution centre in northern England and might instead set one up in France.
We're actually in a situation now where we have to think about what are our definitive options for continuing the EU or abandoning the EU. One of the options ourselves and many other businesses have been looking at is actually having a distribution centre within the EU, because we can ship wholesale into the EU. It is difficult, very, very difficult, but it is possible.
Prime Minister Boris Johnson said Britain would be free to trade globally once it had cast off Europe's shackles, and has dismissed such bureaucratic snags as teething problems.
Coming up, dancers from around the world compete for a prestigious award. Judges evaluate their routines on screens due to the pandemic. An old building in Spain is completely transformed. It now houses Europe's largest vertical garden. Stay tuned to find out more.
Trends may be fleeting, but values are timeless. We now bring you this new clothing brand with classic design and luxurious comfort. It's our way of sharing hope and inspiration from the world of Shenyun. We bring you Shenyun Dancer. Wear it with honor.
A Russian court weighs whether to jail Kremlin critic Alexei Navalny for up to 3.5 years in a case that has sparked nationwide protests and talk of new Western sanctions.
Moscow's state prison authority accuses Navalny of parole violations and wants the court to convert a suspended sentence he had been serving in an embezzlement case. During the hearing, a number of cars with diplomatic license plates were seen parked near Moscow City Court building. Despite a massive show of police force, Navalny's supporters have protested nationwide for weeks.
Even such a high-profile person can be arrested in a live television broadcast without a reason. It means that people like you and I are known people. They can do whatever they want to us.
At least 237 people were detained outside the court.
The UK's House of Lords votes to take a tougher stance on China's human rights record when it comes to trade. The amendment gives UK courts the right to decide if a nation is guilty of genocide and requires Parliament to debate how it will deal with any trade agreements with genocidal nations.
The executive director of the Labour Campaign for Human Rights and the deputy chairman of the Conservative Party Human Rights Commission wrote a joint article in The Times this morning, urging members of Parliament to back it. They highlighted the Chinese regime's human rights abuses against the Uyghurs. But the government has recently said that genocide is not a matter for the courts. A similar amendment was rejected by the government in the Commons in a narrow vote.
In normal times, dozens of teenage ballet dancers would come from across the world to Switzerland to vie for a prestigious dance award. But this year, their routines are judged on screen.
With pandemic restrictions, dancers are showing pre-recorded routines on a flat screen without a live audience. 9 socially distanced judges wear masks and take notes in a hotel ballroom. They're watching Maya Rose Roberts, 16, from Britain go through ballet positions solo. Nicolas Lariche, a former principal dancer for the Paris Opera Ballet, saw no major difference from judging live performances.
From our perspective, we are just discovering them in their studio, which is very moving, I have to say, because you really feel that you are meeting someone at home, I would say.
Robin Park, 16, from South Korea, demonstrated his high jumps from a stage. Around 80 dancers aged 15 to 18 from 20 countries are competing for 6 prizes. A prize can help launch a career by earning winners a 1-year scholarship with a partner school or company. The organizers pressed ahead with the competition because dancers typically perform for only about 20 years.
Well, this year, the reason we have fought so hard to do the Prix de Lausanne this year is to not lose a year in a career of a dancer. A dancer's career is so short that we said we cannot jump 1 year, 1 season, and not put our candidates, dancers, in contact with our partners.
Bradney is worried since dance budgets are liable to be cut during the pandemic recession, but she says she's encouraged by this year's dancers.
An old building in Spain is being converted into a community center, but with no exterior windows. An architectural firm comes up with a vertical indoor garden instead, and it's the largest of its kind on the continent. NTD's Eddie Aitken has more.
This huge vertical garden has 560 square meters of greenery hanging on the wall. Its designer says the need for more fresh air is now more acute during the pandemic.
We have noticed that the connection with nature has gone in our urban landscape.
A company specialized in vertical gardens made the metal and waterproof fabric structure, 32 meters wide and 17 meters tall. It holds the garden and its irrigation system.
Running through all those fabric pockets, there's a hidden irrigation system with sensors that regulate temperature, humidity and water input.
A new community center will host workshops, reading clubs and art classes. Visitors can admire the garden through a glass structure, and a glass ceiling will provide sunlight.
What used to be a tobacco warehouse that had no public use whatsoever will now be a place where the citizens of Santander or any visitor can come and enjoy.
The garden has over 22,000 plants of 26 different species, all tropical and subtropical. Eddie Aitken, NTD News.
And up next, one Dolphin from Florida gives his pick for this year's Super Bowl winner. His choice might surprise you. Find out more when we come back.
What does it mean to devote your life to the truth? Does it mean investigating communist subversion here in America? Does it mean exposing the deadly fentanyl crisis in the Midwest? Or spending late nights and covering deep government corruption? Does it mean persevering over 20 years? Even after 4 masked men set one of our printing presses on fire last year. Because at a time when America's traditional values are under attack, it's the responsibility of righteous journalists to uphold truth and tradition.
A Florida Dolphin may just have handed the LV Super Bowl to the Kansas City Chiefs nearly a week before kickoff.
Nicholas the Dolphin lives at Clearwater Marine Aquarium, just a few miles from the Tampa Stadium where the Super Bowl is scheduled for Sunday. He successfully predicted the Chiefs to win last year and is currently on a 6-event winning streak.
So today, Nicholas is going to be choosing between the Kansas City Chiefs and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
To make the choice, a Dolphin trainer holds out 2 footballs toward Nicholas. Whichever team's ball he touches is his pick to win.
All right, Nicholas has made his choice, and it looks like Nicholas is again this year.
Nicholas picking out last year's winners for a repeat triumph should be good news for Chiefs fans, but some of his friends had other ideas.
And keep in mind that Nicholas's friends have made their selections as well, and we had Winter the Dolphin rooting for the home team, and Nicholas is going to be rooting for the Chiefs.
17-year-old Nicholas may have chosen the Chiefs, but he must be secretly disappointed the Miami Dolphins didn't make the final.
A newborn seal pup was seen exploring a snowy pool bank at Riga Zoo just 2 days after its birth. Still in its fluffy baby fur, the pup tested out its front flippers and used them to move around, all while its mother kept watch in the nearby pool. The pup was born January 26th. It is the third baby of a gray seal couple there. Zookeepers say the pup is healthy and capable of drinking milk, a diet set to help it grow to around 90 pounds within its first month of life. The pup's name will likely be chosen by the Latvian coastal city of Ventspils, which has supported the seals at Riga Zoo for 14 years. And that's all for now. Catch us again tonight at 6:30 Eastern. I'm Kevin Hogan.
Hi, we're happy to announce that you can also catch us on cable TV now. Millions of households already choose us as one of their trusted news sources, and you can too. You can watch us in Chicago, Washington, D.C., New York, and many other cities as well. And if your system doesn't carry NTD yet, you can just give them a quick call and request NTD on your cable provider. Thank you for watching. See you next time.